All right, let's talk Dallas Cowboys. I'm Nick, and this is our daily Cowboys show. Cowboys back at practice, getting ready for their second preseason game just a few short days away against the Baltimore Ravens. A lot of news to get there when it comes to the Cowboys. Some guys moving up the depth chart, what you would expect after the first preseason game. Some young guys getting more opportunities. But first, like we always do on this channel, let's start things off with a little palate cleanser, a little stat of the day or chart of the day, as I like to say. And this first one is courtesy of The Athletic. Let me pull it up here. So this is there based on a survey of 50 executive scouts, anonymous people. So it's really hard to, quantify what kind of people this came from. Were these high-level general managers? Were these low-level scouts? Hard to say, but this is what they came up with in terms of quarterback tiers. Tiers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can see right there on this list, you can see Dak Prescott, he's number 12 in the middle of tier 2. You can see your tier 1 there at the top left. Yeah, I actually kind of agree with this list. I mean, you can argue with, where players need to be ranked specifically. Can I say maybe make an argument that, Dak Prescott should maybe be above Baker Mayfield, above Jalen Hurts? I think you could make that argument. I think Jaden Daniels, after one season, a little too high, right? Again, let's see how the sucker plays out. We've had rookie guys have phenomenal seasons. Dak Prescott had a great rookie season, and he was never ranked the sixth best quarterback in the National Football League. So again, I think, got to let these things shake out a little bit, little recency bias there perhaps. But in terms of the tier structure, I think this sets a really clear example of where the Cowboys are, right? We know Dak Prescott is very, very good. The problem is he is not elite. He is not a Mahomes, Bro, Allen Jackson, or Matthew Stafford, which, by the way, I love the fact they have Stafford in tier 1. As weird as it sounds, Stafford's an underrated quarterback. He has elite level arm talent, elite level intelligence, elite level playmaking ability, right? He's one of these guys that doesn't give the credit because he spent so much of his career with the Detroit Lions. He goes to the Rams. He's won a Super Bowl. Could have and nearly beat Philadelphia in Philly last season when Washington and then later Kansas City got absolutely wrecked. Stafford's better than people think. But if you look at the tier 2 guys, Daniels, Herbert, Goff, Stroud, Hurts, Mayfield, Prescott, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, they're all really good quarterbacks that need really good infrastructure. And Dak Prescott this season has a lot of really good infrastructure. Pickens, Ferguson try to take the next step. They're going to use Turpin in a lot of smart ways. CeeDee Lamb, of course. Offensive line, more investments, first-round pick, BB year 2, bringing in a great coaching staff for the offensive line. Questions at the running back position. Obviously, we'll have to see how Jadon Blue does. We look at Javonte Williams. What does he have left in the tank? But it's clear the Cowboys have at least tried to give infrastructure around Prescott to be successful, and he's had a pretty good camp, all things considered. I think this is also plays into a little bit of the Micah Parsons negotiations because how much money the Cowboys have given Prescott and then they'll have to surround him with weapons, either in dollars with guys like CeeDee Lamb or in draft capital with draft picks or trading draft picks and then later dollars like potentially Pickens. It causes some issues in terms of other parts of the roster, which means you got to be tougher, right? And I think that's part of what's going on with Micah Parsons. I think Micah Parsons wants a certain kind of contract, a certain kind of deal clearly, and the Joneses don't want to do that, right? There's a delta there between Parsons' agent and the Jones family right now in terms of what they want that compensation to be. I think having the right infrastructure around Prescott is really important for the Cowboys' success, and if they spend too much at other positions, they'll run into issues. Now, do I think the Joneses are making the right move here? Time will tell, but I think looking where Dak Prescott is ranked in this tier, I think it's the right spot. Tier 2 needs infrastructure to win, high-quality quarterback. Cowboys just need to be very mindful of how they're allocating resources to give Prescott the infrastructure he needs. All right, moving on to the news. This first one is courtesy of Joseph Hoyt. He was responding to a tweet. Someone was asking Zion with the ones, it seems. Zion Childress, the undrafted free agent star rocketing up the depth chart. Hoyt responded, Zion Childress is playing a good amount with the ones today, right? We talked about a few days ago, Brian Schottenheimer after the game said, listen, we're going to move some guys up the depth chart. He talked specifically about Trayshawn Holden, wide receiver out of Oregon, making some plays. Zion Childress was the best graded, or I should say the second best graded defender on the Cowboys defensively during the preseason game. Mukuamu had a higher rating, but when you get the interception, that kind of boosts your ratings up a little artificially there. Zion Childress played at a very high level, good in man coverage, good in the tackling department, making plays, the big tackle for loss. I'm not surprised he's getting a lot of reps with the first string. He has a real chance to be a starter due to the injuries now in the Cowboys secondary. And to that end, let's take a snapshot here. Brandon Lohr kind of took some notes from what Nick Harris at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram said. So we got a reporter reporting on a reporter who's reporting on the Cowboys. So a little bit of an inception thing going on here. But here's what he posted. If the season started today with everyone healthy, the best guess would be that Javonte Williams would start and Blue would get a healthy share of touches with Sanders and Moffa respectively behind them. I agree with that. I think Sanders is sort of an emergency veteran back, right? Let's say if Williams gets hurt and you want to have a veteran in there who's got some experience, who's seen the game before, pass protection, screen, knows how to handle certain situations as Jadon Blue and Phil Maffa, rookies. You don't want to throw everything on young guys. So Sanders is sort of the emergency vet, like, the classic third string quarterback used to be, where it's a veteran who you can throw in a game. If, like, listen, if crap hits the fan and you've got your guys out, you don't want to have an undrafted rookie be your third string guy, because then you have no chance. I think that's what they have there with Sanders. And again, Blue getting a lot of touches, Maffa getting some short yardage goal line. That makes sense to me. So good strategy there from Dallas. The report goes on to say, if the season began today, Keeman Hall would likely draw the start at nickel cornerback with Elam and Deron Bland on the outside. But this battle remains the most undecided one. Yeah, if the season starts today, right, you're obviously going to go with the veteran after one preseason game, but there's a lot of things to change. I've talked about this a lot since the first preseason game. I think they're going to be very multiple. I think we're going to see a lot of different defensive backs and personnel packages with linebackers as well. Certainly the first few weeks of the season is one, they try and figure out, and two, as they try and buy time for guys like Trayvon Diggs to get healthy. I think it's going to be a little bit of a scramble. Keeman Hall has had I'll say a little bit of a disappointing camp in my opinion, but again, he's been there before. He's played some real football. That's probably his biggest strength. But if guys like Childress keep making plays, he may find himself starting for the Cowboys week 1. And the final report here is, don't be surprised if the eventual starter at one technique on this team is currently on the street or playing elsewhere. Yeah, there's been a lot of rumors about Cowboys trading away a wide receiver. Jalen Tolbert seems to be a guy on the chopping block a little bit for maybe some veteran defensive tackle help or signing a guy. I think you kind of need to, right? I think Mozzie Smith has been such a disappointment, and you can't roll with Jay Toya. Again, as good as the rookie has been for his draft selection, he hasn't been great. It's not like he's been dominant, but he's been acceptable for where he was picked and the expectations, the reasonable expectations you can have of him. But the reality is, if you go Smith and Toya as your starting one technique, that nose tackle, right? One technique being the outside shoulder of the center for anyone who's not familiar with that kind of alignment, you're going to have a lot of problems. They're going to have problems anyway, but you need to come up with some sort of solution that's better than what they have. I think a trade or signing or both is the most reasonable path here. I just think this position is just too weak for the Cowboys. I mean, it's not their starters. Mozzie Smith theoretically gets destroyed in preseason games against backups, right? That is a huge problem. You can't be that bad at that position for your starters. It's one thing if you're beat up and you have a lot of injuries. It happens to a lot of teams. Most teams, they get injured enough at one position where they got to play some third teamers every once in a while. But to have your potential starter, Mozzie Smith and Toya as well, have some issues against backups in the preseason, real cause for concern. All right, moving along here. This is courtesy of John Machota from The Athletic. Cowboys coach Brian Schottenheimer on George Pickens. From the time we got George and we went in my office and spent some time together, shot some free throws and just talked and got to know each other, he made it very clear. He was like, Coach, I'm thrilled to be here. Number one, I want to be coach. I want to be great. Lean into me, be tough on me, tell me the things I need to do. He's been nothing but incredible in terms of the way he's worked with us, the way he has communicated with us. Yeah, sometimes all these young players, they need a change of scenery if things aren't working out. And Pickens was a phenom in Pittsburgh. He made a lot of incredible plays, highlight plays, had a lot of great games. The Steelers, just with their issues at quarterback, I mean, whatever you can say about Pittsburgh, Dak Prescott and the quarterback situation in Dallas is 1,000 times better than what it's been with the Pittsburgh Steelers over the past few years since Ben Roethlisberger has retired. They've had a lot of issues, and I don't think it'll be significantly better with Aaron Rodgers. Granted, Rodgers will be better than Fields and Russell Wilson and Kenny Pickett, but that's almost, to be honest, when it comes to guys like Kenny Pickett, almost better by default in terms of over the course of a long season, especially with that Steelers roster and the issues they have, certainly on their offensive line and sometimes running the football. I look at a guy like Pickens who was sort of caught. Again, they had a bad offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, for years. He was caught just in a terrible situation. Maybe didn't handle it the best way at times, but a change of scenery was needed for him. And look, it's not just this report. Everyone has been raving about Pickens. He's got along with the culture. He's fitting in fine. Like, there are no team issues. He's not going to catch 150 balls, right? CeeDee Lamb's going to get more catches. Ferguson's going to get a lot of targets. You better believe they're going to get other tight ends, running backs involved. Turpin is getting special packages from him all the time to get the football in his hands. Nothing from Pickens negatively yet. In fact, yesterday, big highlight going around social media, dominating a 50-50 ball downfield. I look at Pickens in a very interesting way to be the best 50-50 wide receiver Dallas has had since Dez Bryant. I know a lot of people say Michael Gallup. I think he's much closer to Bryant. I'm not saying he's as good as Dez, but I think he's very comparable. If you can imagine a 90% Dez Bryant paired with CeeDee Lamb, that's the best wide receiver room the Dallas Cowboys have had since, the TO days? phenomenal group emerging at this position. Again, giving Dak the infrastructure he needs. All right, next report here. This is courtesy of Patrick Walker at Voice of the Star. Great follow for Cowboys News if you're looking for someone to follow on X. He posted, Tyler Guyton knee has been off his crutch for days now and told me last week his body is responding very well to rehab. He's now taking parts and walkthroughs per Brian Schottenheimer. No timeline given, but strong progress. The way he's attacking rehab is unusual for a second-year player, and I'm proud of him. All right, there's two little things to attack here in terms of this news. First things first, this guy was slated for maybe a week 1, probabilistically a week 2. He's right on track for that. So there's no serious, barring any major unsurprising setback, there's no serious concern for him missing more than just one game. Obviously good news for the Dallas Cowboys. In fact, he may even be ready for week 1. Time will tell, right? He's on track, doing well. But the second part of that is so important. And we talk about Guyton with the work ethic he had this offseason, really dedicated himself, working with O-line coaches, working with Tyron Smith, putting in the time, and now he's taking that same mindset and bringing it to rehab. I tell you what, when the Cowboys selected him in the first round last year, everyone was like, great skill set, great tool set, developmental project. How can he handle the mental side of the game? Can he figure things out? From a mental perspective, Guyton is crushing it. I love what he's doing. It's the opposite of what we saw from other first-round busts like Taco Charlton or like we're seeing potentially with Mozzie Smith. I believe we are seeing with Mozzie Smith. The mental side of the game with Guyton, with his work ethic, which I think is so important. A guy this physically gifted, putting in the time, humbling himself. Love to see that. Attacking rehab hard. Team guy across the board. Great job, Guyton. We're all rooting for you. Hope to see you back as soon as possible. Ideally week 1, but hey, listen, if it's week 2, worse things have happened. Great news on that front for the Cowboys. All right, next report here. This is from Tommy Yarish. He posted, Brian Schottenheimer wasn't happy with how the Cowboys tackled on Saturday, so he and Matt Eberflus, Cowboys defensive coordinator, agreed to increase the amount of tackling drills the defense does. Here's the linebackers working through one of those drills, and there's just a little screen grab of them doing some tackling drills. So will these tackling drills improve the Cowboys tackling? Probably not, right? That's not how this works. What you're trying to do, and this is a classic coaching thing, classic managerial thing, is just raise awareness, So there's a classic saying in management, right? What gets measured gets managed. Basically, what gets emphasized, what you talk about and evaluate in an organization, that's what's going to get managed. So if you're the top of a company and say, listen, we're trying to cut costs by 10%. Every single one of your middle managers, all they're going to care about is cutting costs because they know if they cut costs, that's what you said you want, they're going to get their raises, promotions, bumps, all that kind of stuff, right? If you say we need to increase revenue, don't really care about costs right now, just get sales up, you'll start seeing that happening. So the Cowboys under Schottenheimer saying, hey, listen, we need to get better at tackling. Will these drills help? Maybe. I'm sure they can't hurt. But the reality is by just bringing awareness to it, you make the Cowboys defenders, they refocus their efforts and say, okay, we got to get better at tackling. Again, what gets measured, what gets emphasized, gets managed, gets developed. That's what we're seeing here for the Dallas Cowboys. Good to see because they were terrible on tackling when it came against the Rams. And to be totally honest with the issues the Cowboys have with injuries defensively and interior one technique defensive tackle and some question marks at linebacker as well. People forget the Cowboys' second best defender, DeMarvion Overshown, is going to miss most of the year. That's what so stinks about this Cowboys defense. And I've said this before, why 2025 is going to be so tough is that so much of the just uber talent on this Cowboys team isn't playing, right? Diggs is out for September, for month of September. It seems a good chunk of that. You've got Overshown out for so long. I mean, if there is a time where Overshown and Parsons and Diggs and Bland can all be on the field at the same time, that's what the defense is supposed to be. We'll see if the injuries, finally work out and count the Cowboys' favor. But again, like I'm saying, if you have those injuries and those problems and those talent deficiencies because of it, you need to be good at tackling. If you can't, if you're not as good at stopping the run, if you're not great in coverage because of injuries, you got to at least get the guys on the ground. Really important that Eberflus and Schottenheimer are emphasizing it. All right, next up, this is courtesy from Nick Harris. Just some injury updates for the Cowboys practice yesterday. Notable inactives include Elijah Clark, undrafted free agent safety, who's kind of fallen a little under the radar. He's a big guy coming into camp, but Childress has stolen the show. He's still a good player, I think Clark is. Just, didn't have a great preseason game. Didn't do terrible, just didn't do anything notable. Hope he gets healthier. Jaden Blue, again, battling the injuries. And we got Saheed Charles right there. I always butcher his name there. It's always tough for me, so I apologize to Mr. Charles. But again, just a backup offensive lineman, little depth piece. Again, O-line, one of the more beat-up positions in camp. But notable actives include Jake Ferguson. He had a little injury scare about a week ago. That's been 100% resolved. Joe Milton from the game. That looks 100% resolved. Miles Sanders back into the fold. Good to see there. And Princeton Fant. Wow, his name you didn't hear a lot this camp. backup tight end. He's getting more into the fold. And Brevin Spanford, one of the guys I'm really high on, he's starting to get more activity as well. I think he's a really good run blocker. I think if he can get healthy and prepared, he'll be a good asset for them in the running game this season. All right, this is next report here is courtesy of John Machado over The Athletic. Cowboys cornerback DaRon Bland said there have been some talks with his agent. He said he'd like to get a new deal before the season, hopefully. So this is important to understand because a lot of people get caught up in the Cowboys-Parsons drama, like, what are the Cowboys doing, right? They're not doing anything. They need to get off their butts. The reality is they are working. We saw this happen with Ferguson. They signed the deal. They are working with Tyler Smith's guys. They're working with DaRon Bland's guys. They're trying to figure it out and go through these conversations. It's early, of course, and you want to see how everything plays out. I think if the Cowboys if they continue to go down this path and they lock down Smith and lock down Bland on pretty solid contracts, they'll be fine. I think one of the issues the Jones family has in terms of these big deals is they're a little gun shy with the superstars, right? Now, CeeDee Lamb, they're happy to do it because he's been that fantastic. But if you go in the past, you look at the Brandon Carr deal, that was a disaster. The Jalen Smith linebacker deal, that was a disaster. The Tyron Smith deal worked out great. The Ezekiel Elliott deal was a disaster, right? Dak Prescott, I think we call it a B-, right? He's been very, very good leader, but we're trying to get championships here, deep postseason runs, hasn't delivered on that, and the injury concerns with Prescott, real issues there. So if you look at their stars and getting big-time deals, like we're talking the A-plus guys, the marquee guys, even Diggs, injury concerns, right? You start seeing some reasons why the Cowboys front office would be a little gun-shy. But those middle-tier guys, those Fergusons, the Oso Odighizuwas, guys like DaRon Bland, I think getting them locked down is a smart move to make, and it seems the Cowboys are trending in that direction. Again, you don't have to rush on this, but getting some sort of deal done, especially considering DaRon Bland, if he is able to go more closer to the 2023 form, not that he could ever replicate that season perfectly, but just to be healthy and a quality player this season would be a huge win for the Dallas Cowboys. All right, it's a healthy amount of news yesterday. Let's go ahead and get into the comments. There's a lot of great comments yesterday. This first one is from Robbie Lavex, however you pronounce your handle there. Would you take a risk on Christian Wilkins? Because seeing the interior D-line, I would. Toya has much to improve, but I like what he brings. I agree Toya has much to improve for sure, but he's got good size, good run defender. Good question, and I like the response to this from the Plague Doctor posted. The problem is that Wilkins is more of a pressure defensive tackle. We have that in Osa, talking about Oso Odighizuwa. Toya could look better as the preseason continues and later with starters. You generally want a 1 and a 3. We'll see how it goes. I agree 100%, right? So if Christian Wilkins was available in terms of being 100% healthy, there are some concerns about his health. I think the biggest risk to me is the Cowboys would just be adding another great pass rusher, right? They've already got Oso Odighizuwa. They've got conceivably Parsons, Williams. You look at, of course, Fowler. You talk about Ezeraku, the rookie. They have so many great pass rushers, and adding Wilkins, who's a really good defensive lineman pass rusher. And even in the run game, he's much more of a disruptor than he is a run stuffer. He's more of a 3 technique, outside shoulder of the guard, B-gap player than a 1 technique, A-gap, old nose tackle kind of role, just different stylistically. I don't think it's what the Cowboys need, right? You have a little too many cooks in the kitchen when it comes to pass rushers already. You're right at the hairy edge of that. Adding Wilkins doesn't help you solve the problem. Toya getting better helps, but I agree. I mentioned in the report earlier today, they're going to have to go another route to add some more depth there. Free agency trade, whatever it may be, they're going to have to add at least 1 body, probably 2. They're probably going to have 2 veterans. Trade for somebody would be my guess, and then add in a veteran for like a practice squad just to have some emergency depth there when they cut Mozzie Smith. I think Toya getting better would be great, something to keep an eye on. I'm excited to see what he does against Baltimore. They're a physical team, even their backups, but real concerns there at that position. All right, this next comment is from @TR6888. Ashton Genty had 3 rushes for 7 yards, and Travis Hunter looked like crap on offense and defense. Milton is learning a new offense, talking about Joe Milton and his poor performance. New coaches, and if anyone who played football paid attention, he was extremely nervous the first 2 quarters. He's a super high-energy kid. He needs a buttload of time in the film room watching his mistakes, and Shoddy should have started pounding the rock until Milton calmed down. Yeah, I think the overreaction to Milton, there's some people saying that it was a terrible decision, should have kept Trey Lance. No, he's a developmental guy. I've said this like 5,000 times. He's a developmental guy. Let him develop. And I think what we saw from the Cowboys coaching staff is the first couple series of the game, they made it really hard for him. They said, all right, let's see where you're at, right? It's one of those things, let's throw you off the deep end, sink or swim, and see how you did. And he didn't do so well, right? And when they settled things down, ran the ball, did more play action kind of stuff, he started to perform better. At the end of the game, he had calmed down and was doing some good things. I think it was one of those things, they started out the first preseason game and says, listen, Let's see how good Milton is. Is he already at a super high level? And he isn't. And like, okay, let's dial it back. Let's work on him a little bit. Again, you're going to have to evaluate players. Preseason's such a good time for these sort of developmental guys to throw them off the deep end for stretches to see how they do, see where they're at. And Milton still doing good things in camp. I think settled down the second half of the preseason game. We'll see how he does the rest of the preseason. But again, developmental guy, let him develop. Let's not freak out. I agree. Guys like Travis Hunter didn't do anything. Ashton Genty didn't do anything. And they're great football players. I think they're going to have great careers, the both of them, for Jacksonville and Las Vegas. I think let's settle down with the reaction and concern over Milton. I think the one thing to be questioning about going forward is if he doesn't get better, who you want as your true QB2 in case Prescott goes hurt. But again, because of the new NFL rules where you have an emergency quarterback, it's really just more of a how you want to split reps in terms of game plan preparedness. That's really just all that means at this point. So I think it's something to consider and keep an eye on. But letting Joe Milton develop, getting him the opportunities is going to be critically important for the Cowboys. This next one is from Adam the Wizard. What you thinking about the O-line play? I really don't hear much about Bass. Is TJ Bass falling off the depth chart? So Bass is the classic example of a good versatile backup, right? They have him getting reps at center. They have him getting reps at both guards. He's a good utility interior offensive lineman. So you normally carry 8 or 9 offensive linemen. You dress 8 or 9 offensive linemen on game day. You have your starting 5, right? Center, 2 guards, 2 tackles. You usually have a swing tackle, a left or right tackle guy who can play both. You have a backup center who can sometimes play guard, and you have a backup guard who can also be your emergency center. So Hoffman is the backup center who can also play guard, and Bass is an emergency center who's a backup guard. And then Nate Thomas, who now is starting at left tackle because Guyton is out. When Guyton returns, he will most likely be the swing tackle. There's a chance they carry another offensive lineman to be another backup tackle. It depends on the roster structure. Some teams do it differently and how they are feeling about injury concerns, about flexibility, and who the guys they have, right? So if you just look at 8 guys, it would just be swing tackle, center, backup guard, right? Emergency center. If you have 9 guys, you throw another tackle in there. Bass is a very experienced guy. He's played a lot of football. He can play all 3 interior positions, left guard, center, right guard. Some issues snapping in the last preseason game. He's far from a star. He's far from an elite player, but he's a good, solid, fundamentally sound guy. If he has to play center, it's not going to be a disaster. He's good enough to get you through a game or games if he needs to play. Again, he won't dominate the highlight film. You'll never hear him on the talk shows or anything like that just because he's just okay. But he's a versatile, good, solid backup, like a utility infielder in basketball. Just a great example, in baseball, utility infielder. Just a great example of that kind of player. Won't make the highlights, won't make an all-star game, but a good guy to have on your roster. Next one is from omarn.91. People need to remember that every other team has their own weaknesses and injuries. Some have players gone for the season. If you have many ways to score a touchdown, you have a better chance of winning. You can't win without points. Go crazy with the offense. Very, very true. People forget. I think it was, there was a period there in the 2010s where the Patriots had a bad defense, the Packers with Aaron Rodgers had a bad defense, and the New Orleans Saints with Sean Payton and Drew Brees had a bad defense. But they were winning all sorts of games, right? Obviously, Patriots, Packers won a Super Bowl. They won 15 games the following year. I mean, the Saints obviously won a Super Bowl, and then they were doing a lot of winning with Breeze, of course. And even you look at teams in recent memory, like the Bengals, they made it to a Super Bowl appearance on the back of, sort of scrappy defense, right? They weren't elite. They were sort of just scrappy, right? And I think one of the things that can happen is we get so short-term memory hold. We saw the Chiefs winning in 2023 with a lot of defense, and we saw the Eagles last year win it in 2024 with a lot of defense. But history indicates, if you look at the longer time horizon, about like the last 20, 25 years, that defense doesn't win championships. Offenses and quarterback play does, right? There are exceptions, but you look at the vast majority of titles and vast majority of teams, they're offensively oriented, right? The defense has to come up big in big spots. It's got to be clutch and show up in big games. But if you want to win games, if you want to make the playoffs, if you want to be good, you got to score points. And I love the comment here. You got to have a lot of different ways to score points. Even when Dallas went 12-5 in 2023, they didn't have a lot of ways, right? CeeDee Lamb being spectacular or Dak Prescott being spectacular, that was about 90% of how they could score. And look, they both had great seasons, so it really worked out. 2024, injuries and other execution issues kind of got rid of a lot of those options. This offseason, this training camp, what are we seeing? Cowboys, a little bit different ways, right? You got Pickens, 50-50 ball, opposite CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb being CeeDee Lamb, hoping Ferguson returns. Good receiving threat, young running back in blue here. Devon Williams doing some good things. More investment in the offensive line, right? Year 2 guys in Guyton and Beebe. Tyler Booker coming into the fold. Maybe they can run the ball in the red zone. Turpin getting some unique touches, Weapon X kind of player. They're doing some more QB runs, design QB runs. Again, just trying to come up with creative ways to score, get more points on the board. We'll have to see how it works on Sundays, but I agree with you 100%. A lot of people are focusing on the defense, defensive line, and corner, and look, there are issues there. But the reality is the Cowboys, whether they're good, bad, or mediocre, it's going to depend on the offense and Dak Prescott. We all know that, to be totally honest. We're just hoping the defense, in my opinion, can just hang on until people get healthy, figure out something at one technique. But this season begins and ends with number 4. Frank Carr 7029 commented. He's commented this a few times before. We should have drafted Shedeur Sanders in the 5th. Look, man, if you keep commenting that and Shedeur Sanders becomes an all-pro superstar, I'm going to give you a lot of credit because you're harping on that point there. Now, to be fair, the Cowboys didn't have a 4th-round pick, so and Sanders was selected before their 5th-round selection. So you should probably make the argument that they should have selected Sanders in the 3rd round instead of Savon Revel. But regardless, we'll track this. We'll see how this goes. Shedeur Sanders look good, right? I'm rooting for him. I liked him in Colorado. Obviously, like his dad, of course. So hope he does well with Cleveland or wherever he ends up. This is from Delta 704. Talking about yesterday, I was able to get some All-22 and played it while I was talking. He said, I know I always love to see exactly what you're talking about on film while you're talking about it. Looks great, man. Yeah, I appreciate the feedback and the comment there. Sometimes when I, work at my setup in front of here and I got, my monitors and like all these different windows, it looks okay to me during the pre-show and while I'm recording it can look fine, but I never know how it looks and sounds to you guys. So if there's anything weird or funky that you're like, hey, that looked really weird, or hey, I really like that, let me know. I'll do more of it. Want to make the show as best I can for you guys. But all right, that is all the comments I see here to respond to today. Yeah, we're getting closer to the next preseason game. Look, we're going to have to see a lot of these young guys develop. I think, I've hit on this point a bunch of times. Everyone gets it. One technique, that defensive tackle is a real problem. I think the linebacking core has some issues, but I think getting some youth experience and some health there. Murray making more plays now. He's showing up. Childress continues to make plays, guys. There's something about this kid. A lot of interesting football to happen. I think we're going to have to track to see how a lot of these Cowboys do. I want to see Tyler Booker get in some live game action just because I want to look at his film and watch him. A little selfish from my end, but we'll see what the Cowboys strategy and what their focus is. But until tomorrow, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection.